Now that Trump is president, which option is best for you and your fiance? Should you do a fiance petition or should you just get legally married and file for your fiance as your spouse? Well, that's what we're going to be discussing in today's video. But before I get to that, I just want to say I don't mention adjusting status in this video. Adjustment of status is different than petitioning for a fiance or spouse who's abroad. Adjustment of status means your spouse entered the US lawfully with some sort of visa or was paroled into the US. And if your spouse is physically in the US, in most situations, I would say there is no question about what you should do under Trump. You should apply for adjustment of status. And if that's the scenario you're in right now and your spouse is actually physically in the US after entering with a visa, you should just stop watching this video. Go watch my other videos about adjustment of status under the Trump administration. I would 100% of the time prefer adjustment of status in the US under Trump versus consular processing through a marriage petition or through a fiance petition, because number one, it's much more predictable. Number two, the spouses are together and we know that they're not going to be separated anytime soon. Number three, you'll get employment authorization much faster. And number four, the chances of success are currently higher for a variety of reasons. Now that we got that house cleaning out of the way, let's talk about whether you should file a fiance petition for your spouse abroad or whether you should just get married. And if you're saying, well, getting married isn't really an option because it would take me like 6 months before I can go over there the next time, we'd have to get legally married, that's like a whole thing. I want to just petition for them now as my fiance. I'll stop you right there and say there is the option of the Utah marriage certificate, which allows you to get married by like Zoom or video in the state of Utah. If you just Google Utah online marriage, and I have had tons of clients do this since I started recommending it, you can get a legit marriage certificate from the state of Utah in like less than 2 weeks. And then you could begin an actual family-based petition process for a spouse instead of just a fiance. I made another video that talks about processing times for fiance petitions versus marriage-based petitions. And the summary of that video was basically that a fiance petition can take anywhere from like 8 months to 30 something months. Whereas a spouse petition, 80% of the time will take less than 18 months, currently anyway. And when you average it all out, it actually turns out that a spouse petition is more predictable and on average is actually faster than a fiance petition. But let's throw that all out the window. Let's assume processing times are exactly the same. Let's assume filing fees are exactly the same, which they are definitely not. Fiancé petitions end up costing way more because you have to also do adjustment of status after they enter the US. And let's also assume that you're able to easily get married or file a fiancé petition before we get into the substance of this video. All things considered, I would strongly prefer that you file a petition for a spouse over a fiancé. And the main reason for this is there are more ways in which a fiance petition can get denied. Let me give you an example. So the fiance petition has one requirement that each fiance must write a statement of intent to marry their fiance. And when you go to the interview, it is possible that the immigration officer can say, I don't believe you have the requisite intent for us to approve this fiancé petition. This hasn't been an issue historically, but now it can easily become an issue. And how are you going to overcome that? You've already waited a year for your interview. At that point, it might be easier to just marry your fiancé to prove that you actually intend to get married. No one can say, we don't believe you're gonna actually marry this person if you're actually already married. So for that reason alone, I would say get married instead of filing a petition for a fiance. Right now, the Trump administration is absolutely gutting the Department of State, which is the agency tasked with controlling the consulates and these consular interviews. And as they have fewer and fewer personnel and fewer resources to process applications, we can see processing times taking much longer. And I would not be surprised if they begin to prioritize spouses over fiancés, which makes sense. If you're a spouse, you should probably be priority over a fiance because you're already married. You've already established that family relationship. So I don't exactly know what's going to be happening at these consulates in the future. If the past is any predictor of what's going to happen now, I would say processing times are going to dramatically increase, and cases that were approvable are going to just fall into a black hole that we call the administrative processing black hole. Basically, what that means is after you go for your interview at the consulate will give you a letter saying your case is being held for administrative processing, and it could be there for years, as happened last time that Trump was president. So that's actually what I'm dreading. If both of these options are the same to you, I would personally just get married and file the I-130 family petition immediately. Do not wait, because the longer you wait, the longer the processing times are going to be, the higher the probability that your case will be subject to some sort of extraordinary delay or administrative processing delay. So I just want to avoid all of that if possible. All right, guys, that brings us to the end of today's video. If you are marrying a US citizen, or you're a US citizen and you're marrying an immigrant spouse, reach out to me. I would love to consult with you and help you and your family create a plan for the future. You could schedule a consultation directly with me. You can find my information in the video description below. If you're interested in family-based immigration, naturalization, or changes to the Trump administration's immigration policies, be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time for another video.